I'll just give a plug for UC Love Data Week as we're waiting for folks to join. This is day 2 of a week-long extravaganza of events and webinars and hands-on sessions and talks and all kinds of fun stuff. So way down at the bottom there, we've got our URL. Maybe we can also have someone throw that in the chat just so that it's handy. And yeah, this is our session, one of I think many that all of us are teaching. So we're excited that you're here, and hopefully you'll have a chance to check out some of the other sessions as well. All right, I think I'll go ahead and get started looking at Stephanie. That sounds good. Okay. All right, well, welcome everyone. So today, this session here is on feeding curiosity, a smorgasbord of open data sources for research. So my name is Ariel Deardorff. I'm from UC San Francisco, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. And what we've got going on today is a series of 5 lightning talks that are showcasing really exciting data sets that we love. And then we'll have time at the end for question and answer. So why highlight these data sets? Because there is so much data out there for research. So we're really trying to give you this picture of a smorgasbord, like we're laying it all out for you as a delicious buffet. And so these are data sets that you can use to answer your own research questions, to practice your data analysis skills, all kinds of different purposes. And what do we mean by open? So we're going to cover a wide variety of sources today. And some of these are, click to download. Some of them you need to make an account. Some of them you might actually even need to apply if there's some human subjects research, but all of them are going to be available for you to access. So we'll highlight those as we go and kind of get into some of the differences there. But just know, we really want to focus on ones today that are available for you to use in your research. We're going to highlight data from a couple different domains. So we'll have some social science data resources, health, government, and some other kind of pretty weird, fun niche ones. And the size is really going to vary too. So some of these might be, a small spreadsheet that you can download. Others you might need to access in the cloud because it's actually too large to, use on your laptop. And finally, so our name today, this feeding curiosity, was actually suggested to us by ChatGPT. We were, trying to come up with some good titles. And so we thought that whenever we can, we would highlight maybe a food-related data set in our collections today. So that's just a little fun Easter egg to kind of follow us through. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to throw them in the chat. We are recording this session, so you can have the recording and see all of the little mini demos that we're going to be doing. And we will also send out a link to these slides, which is really just this slide, a little cheat sheet of kind of what we're going to be covering today. So you have all the links in one place. So just to give you a quick preview before we launch in, we have, as I said, these 5 lightning talks. We're going to start with Stephanie, who will walk us through a bunch of different options in the Data is Plural archive. And then Kat will walk us through IPUMs or IPUMs. I don't know how we pronounce that, Kat, but maybe you can tell us more about that. Geoff will demonstrate some of the Google public data sets that are available. These are much, very large data sets that have a lot of rich information in them. Christy will demonstrate a searchable repository of open access health data resources that she has put together that is really fabulous. And finally, Andy will walk us through the Open Data Network. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and stop sharing, and I will turn it over to Stephanie to talk to us about Data is Plural.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Labou, and I am the data science librarian at UC San Diego. And I am so excited to share with you today, Data is Plural. So we're starting off with this one because it is really a grab bag of everything. It has text data, it has numeric data, it has big data, it has small data, it has arts and humanities data, it has social science data, it has genomics data, it has everything you could ever want. So some of the other data sources that we're going to talk about are in more formal repositories. What I like to think of this as is a semi-crowdsourced curated collection of just really cool data. So it's actually the accumulation of a newsletter sent out weekly by Jeremy Singer-Vine, and it's been running since 2015. And so the way that I like to showcase this and the way that I like to explore this is actually looking through their full archive. in spreadsheet format. So this is what it looks like. We can scroll through. We've got when this was highlighted in the resource, headline, text, and lots of links. And as I'm scrolling through, which is a little quick, you can see the wide range of data that we have here. And I'm going to focus on a few as examples. And I think these are really useful to think about in terms of how open data might be shared. This happens to be an aggregator of open, well-documented, and really interesting data, but digging further into some of the individual ones is a really useful way to think about open data. So I'm going to start with an example that I have here. And it is a data set of key indicators of women's socioeconomic status. So we've got this nice summary blurb of the data resource. And crucially, what we have are links. Now, this first link actually takes us to the paper that is associated with this data set. It was published in the journal Scientific Data. If you've never experienced the journal's Scientific Data, I'm also thrilled to be able to share that with you because it is a delightful source of open data. So it is a peer-reviewed open access journal where researchers write up papers describing the data sets that they have created. So this is an example that I wanted to go through because crucially, what this group has done is pulled together other public data sources. So we can see here that they are using for their underlying data, demographic and health surveys. So this is data from USAID's. We've got country and year level data. If we look into the individual data sets, we've got all these different variables. This is a lot of work. If I wanted to get a global time series of every country and every variable, it's going to be a lot of work to pull those together and harmonize them. So what this research group has done is not only that, but they've combined it with some other socioeconomic and climatic variables. So this can really help escalate your research and skip some of that data aggregation and harmonization step. And so you can read through the methods in terms of how they pulled all this together. Under the data records, there is a link to where the data itself is downloadable, which happens to be on Zenodo. And then, of course, if you're very curious about technical validation, the papers in Scientific Data will go through if they did any imputation or filling in of missing values. So this is a really great way to find open data that's not necessarily in a different repository. This one happens to be in Zenodo, but unless you knew where to find it, it's not necessarily something that you would know to look for. So, big fan of the research that gets published in Scientific Data. It's a great way to find these open data sources. And again, you can scroll through, they've got all kinds of stuff across domains. They have, chromosomal data sets. They've got this global database of bird nest traits. I mean, all kinds of cool stuff that you can find. Another example that I want to highlight is we've got our published papers that have data, but also there's plenty of open data out there that isn't associated with a publication. And so this is one that I actually found when I was looking for data for a grad student and started thinking to myself, okay, we've got all these documents that are about the opioid settlement payouts. It sure would be nice if someone had gone through and already taken all that data in these documents and put it into a structured format. So I hit up my absolute favorite location, data is plural, found this and thought, great, now I can send this student directly to this site where it turns out a lawyer has already done that work and pulled together all the documents about the settlements and created this lovely structured table that has the name of the company, the reported value, if there's any information that's been reported out about the split of settlement. And all this represents so much work. It takes a lot of time and energy and expertise to pull together data from all these different places into something like this, but it can make a huge difference for your research if you don't have to spend the time doing this. You can cite this. You can say, I found this great open data source. Here's the citation, and now I can move on with the rest of my research. So we've got ones that are going to be associated with published papers and ones that aren't really associated with papers and just live on someone's website. Um, Another example that I found, because I think it's fascinating to see how open data in the arts and humanities is evolving, is this wonderful collection of literary prizes for the past 100 years. Again, someone has done the work to go through document by document and manually extract this information until we get this lovely table. And so I think it's really interesting to see the wide variety of data from data is plural, because you have everything from, there was a research team that put GPS trackers on cats. Turns out that exists. If you've ever wondered, wow, I wonder if a research team has done something, this is the place you want to go to check. This is also a really great place to find government resources that can somewhat be buried or maybe a little bit underloved. And so going through and you're looking for, I wonder what Bureau of Labor Statistics options have been highlighted here. It's not exhaustive, but it is sometimes a good way to start thinking of who might have this open data. And so that's why this is one of my absolute favorite data resources to check, either for very niche research to see if someone has already done that aggregation and harmonization step. And it's really useful for teaching as well, and for students to learn how to work with data. So as our first Easter egg, I got a request from a student who wanted to learn a little bit about network analysis. And so I started thinking, where would I find a good network data set? There's lots out there. Where would I find a good network data set that is interesting and kind of fun and suitable for students to work with? I go to my favorite resource, Data is Plural. I found this particular paper where they are looking through recipe ingredients to create a flavor network. And it looks like this. And they include as downloadable data all the data you need to recreate this network. And now there's not only a great data set that you can use to practice your network analysis skills, but it also is backed up by this peer-reviewed publication and makes for a great teaching and learning opportunity. So I will stop there. I'm sure that I could go on for a full hour about how excited I am about this resource. I would say definitely check it out. Everything that is included in here is well documented and open and available. And I would love if other people would love it as much as I do. So I will stop sharing and pass it on to our next presenter.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. And Kat, you're up next.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Kat Koziar. I am the data librarian at UC Riverside. Can you see my screen okay? With IPUMs on it? Cool. So yeah, I'm talking about IPUMs. That's how it's pronounced. I found out today because I actually listened to one of their webinars. Well, the beginning of it, because I thought I really should know how this is pronounced, because it is one of my favorite data sets. And what IPUMs originally stood for was Integrated Public Use Microdata Survey, right? And it originally stood for that, doesn't anymore. It just stands for itself, IPUMs, because they don't have, it's not just microdata, but there is a wide variety of microdata. And the big thing that I really like about it is because it is integrated. And Stephanie had highlighted that a lot already about the importance of harmonization, right? And so this is basically its census data, population, survey data. One of the data sets that she highlighted is the DHS. They actually have a link to it and has access to it through this interface. And in case you don't know what microdata actually means, is each record in the data set represents an individual person or household. So when you think about that in terms of census or community surveys or, global health surveys, that's really impressive that they have harmonized it across multiple years and multiple geographies. So let's go ahead and look at USA. And I don't know about you, but when I see something like this and I want to get to know what the data is, even though there's a lot of text here, when I see this get data, that's what I'm going to click, right? And it also makes me wonder, oh, well, do I need to register or log in? And you actually don't yet. You do need to register to download the data, but in order to actually view the data, the data variables and the sample sets, you don't need to register anything yet. So that's another plus for this because you can see if it's going to meet the research question that you have. So for select samples, that basically means they're looking for which sample surveys that you're going to be using. So this is American Community Survey. And the difference, you may be thinking, is this like the full population? And when you click on one of these here, it's going to take you down to a description. And so you could see that this 2019 sample truly is only 1 in 100 random sample of the population. But just going back, if you wanted full count, then they've also have full count for what has been in the census, because we're looking at the US, has been released. So if I go ahead and select their defaults, and then you just start looking at the variables, right? And whenever you select, it's going to show you which variables are, this is what I love about it, because you may not know, you may think that the Census Bureau household type with cohabitation is a cool thing to look at, but then you find out that it's only in a couple of years. And so to be able to look and see where it's available, right, and how many of your samples that you selected it's available in is really powerful. And so if you could you just click on the plus sign, you can see it's added to the cart. And then you could also search. So let's go ahead and search on food. And that was found 19 times, right? And then it gives you different levels. So let's go ahead and do the one that is, oh, I wonder what that actually is. Huh. And then I'm going to search on age also, because I want to show you something. Age. So searching on age over this, age is found in the variables 114 times. So that sort of emphasizes the need to actually think through your research question in order to identify which variables you really need, right? Now, I've added 3 variables to the cart, and then I could view the cart, and it tells you basically more information about it. And then whenever you click Create Data Extract, you have some options that if this was a full hour-long webinar, we'd be able to go into. But basically right here, whenever you submit extract, is when it's going to ask you either to create an account or to sign in. Now, I'm not going to do that right now, but I am going to bring up where I'm already signed in another browser. And here, whenever I click on my data, then it actually shows which extracts you have. Now, like that first extract that I had, that I made that last year, and then I revised it and resubmitted it yesterday, right, to create and do some timing. So it was actually, you can see right now that the data cart actually has the number of variables and samples that were in this revision because I had already preloaded it. And there's 47 variables. So these 47 variables from 20 samples, it's almost 600 meg data file. And that data file is it's a compressed .gz file, right? And so that's fairly big. It took about 15 minutes for it to process, and then it sends you an email. And then the other cool things that I love about this is it gives you command files. So I like working in R, and it's literally the R script that I need. The cool thing about R is you don't need to extract the data file. It just works directly with the .gz file. But you have your stata, and it gives you everything you need in order to load the data, SPSS, SAS, and then you have your code books, and this DDI file is an XML file, which is also a code book that's used for various. Actually, it's used definitely in R to output it. So, how much time do I have left?
30 seconds.
Okay, last thing that I want to show you about this. If you want to see how other people use it, you can look in their bibliography. In fact, that search, it was I think it was Live Well. That's that article that Stephanie brought up, right? Because they used part of this IPMS data set from the DHS. So you can look there to see how people are using it, and then also in their research awards, because they have this year is what you nominate, and then they have the previous award winners. And that's it. I hope you use it.
Thanks, Kat. Now we all know it's IPMS. Good to know. All right, so Geoff is next with Google Public Datasets.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll share screen here. So this is a fairly elaborate tool, and since I only have 8 minutes, I'm going to give you a demo rather than trying to explain too much about what it is, and I hope you start to get a sense of what BigQuery, Google BigQuery might be interesting for you just by seeing it at work. Anyway, though, as a quick overview, BigQuery Public Datasets is a program that I'm intrigued with at Google. As you can see, they are a bunch of data sets that are made available to the general public through this program. BigQuery hosts these public data sets, and then, as it says, you pay only for the queries you perform on them, and the first terabyte per month is free. So there's a lot of availability. Unfortunately, too much of Google Cloud still requires that you put a credit card down to use it, even if you don't hit the paid tier, and I feel that that keeps a lot of people from using it. So I think Google came under enough criticism for this that they opened up some of the elements of BigQuery to use the way you could use Google Colab or Google Docs or Google Mail. You just need an account. You don't have to put a credit card or any payment method down. And that was actually might have been the reason I'm willing to talk about it today, because if it's a tool that requires that you put a payment method down just to use it at the free tier, I probably wouldn't consider it public. But since you can use it without a credit card, I think that is worth looking into. So if you go to I'll give you all the links here. So if you want to use BigQuery, and again, I'll demonstrate it. I think you'll get a better sense of what it's used for when I demonstrate it. You can go to this link, and it's the sandbox. And the sandbox allows you to use BigQuery just with a Google account. Again, you don't have to create a full Google Cloud Platform account with a payment method and so forth. So if you click on this, I already have it open. You go to this interface. Now this is Google BigQuery Studio. You can integrate it with SQL, Python, many other languages. Now you see here, I have a thing called tobacco here, which I'll get to in a moment. That's a data set that I uploaded. But first, let's go take a look at the BigQuery public data sets. So when you're here, and again, you would have to log in just through your standard Google login. You can go to add, and when you add a data set, can you see this? Because it's a pop-up window. Can you see source and files? Okay,
Yep.
Great, thank you. What you can do is you would scroll down here to public data sets. And I encourage you to explore this on your own. Click on public data sets, and you see a lot of interesting things are going to pop up for you. And these are all public data sets. And Google did actually exempt from payment a lot of the COVID-related data. I think maybe if I scroll down a little bit, I'll find the COVID data set here. But you're going to want to look through these. Where is the? I thought I could find that COVID data set. Oh, actually, it would be in the side. My apologies. Over here. Let's see here. Data sets for COVID research. That was something that was interesting to people. If you double click on that, it'll allow you to say, you want to take a look at it, and we'll view the data set. When I view the data set, then we're back in BigQuery Studio, and it's loading, and you see that all the data sets related to it are present. The data set I'd like to use for the demo today was some BBC News data, because it's relatively small and it's interesting, and I think I'll be able to demo what this can be used to do. We open up that data set, there's full text here, and I'll click on that. And you can see the structure of this. It's just a table. And if we preview it, you can see that what's here is the body, that's the article from the BBC, the title, the file name, and a category that was assigned by the BBC to this data set. So this is good. This isn't a huge data set. As you see, it's only about 2,000 rows, but this could be 2 million. These data sets can be far too big to download. So what you could do, though, is if it was hosted here, is you can go to query, and at some tiers you can query it with Python. You can interact with it with a Python Jupyter notebook. I'll just query everything first and run it. It's good that they limit it to 1,000 because these can be very big. And you see these are the results. Just to show you another couple of queries, what if you were interested, you see that everything's tech. What are the categories? You could say something like select distinct category from it, run it, and now you would see those are the categories that are included in this data set. If you're interested in how many of each category, you could say select count, select the category and the count. And then if you know SQL, you'll see what I'm doing is an aggregate query group by category, and run it. I'm only running these two just, okay, what did I do? Oh, have to get rid of the limit. Select category, count everything. Oh, from, I only have 8 minutes. I would save myself some time if I didn't rush. Okay, and this here, you see, this is the query that would give us the count. So they're roughly evenly balanced. That's just a couple of examples. I said, oh, let's do one more. Maybe I'd be interested in selecting everything where the category equals, let's say politics. There's another query that we can run, and you see that would give us those results. So again, imagine if you're dealing with a really massive data set, or just data sets that are really interesting to you. That would be one way to get at it. The other thing I wanted to show you just before we go is the UCSF library does have very big data sets that we make available from the industry archives. And these are really big, often, and difficult to query. You can upload them and use them. Just anytime you do this, just be aware that you are dealing with, this is not a secure system. So I would only do it with public data or data that again, doesn't have any restrictions on it. But to give you a look at what maybe one of our prepared data sets is, you would have, these are transcriptions for videos. So we would have the transcription. This is an aggregation of the confidence level. These are all things you get from Google Cloud Intelligence, AI. The embedded text, some of the labels, some of the things that Vertex Cloud AI is finding, as well as some estimates as to what categories are coming from and what confidence the AI that's used to generate has in these. So it can be very useful for you. And by the way, these are all available in a query. You just write them in your query. You don't actually have to have a very strong, you don't have to have a lot of sophistication in, say, programming for AI. Just before I go, I want to show you one more thing here. Let me go ahead and open that up and share this. These are the links. Feel free to take a screen grab if you'd like to investigate this on your own. Otherwise, these links will all go out to you after this. And I do want to just give a little pitch. Go here. The UCSF libraries digital humanities workshops, which is about 12-week Python and SQL. We will cover how to use these public data sets that are hosted by the library and how to work them with Python and so forth. We sort of it builds to being able to use these sort of tools in Python or SQL. So anyway, this will all go out to you later. So that wraps it up. I think I'm at 8 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Geoff. Yeah, and can you throw those links in the chat as well so people have them
Sure.
right now? All right. Okay, now we're taking it over to Christy, who will tell us about some health data resources.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And can you see the screen that says ODD, UC Love Data Week 2024? Okay,
We
great.
can.
That's half the battle right there. So hi everybody, it's my name is Christy Navarro and I'm the Health Informatics Research Data Officer at UC Davis Health in the Clinical and Translational Science Center. UC Davis Health, like most institutions, have a really robust process for accessing, using, and disclosing data for research purposes and other purposes. So we know how to deal and access data that's classified, but that process can be rather painful. So I've been working with researchers and trying to encourage the use of open data resources because they can skip that that process. But we look for obviously utility in the data too. So what about open data resources? As I said, I do consultations with researchers, students, faculty, and staff to assist them in finding that open data that's focused on health. So it originally started, the library had a really nice page with health statistics. But the issue for me was that they were classified at, by disease state. But if you wanted to look for other aspects of the open data resources, you couldn't search and sort. So that was the starting place, about 6 months of consultations, and I had plenty of use cases. So it became worth it to develop what I am affectionately referring to as the as ODD, which is Open Data. I'm sorry, I forgot. Open Data Depot. I forgot the name. It's kind of new. So I'd like to just show you this tool. Now, I have an enterprise license and our organization has that, but you don't have to have even a user ID or password to use this tool. Although I really have enjoyed using it and finding it very cool. So the other piece you can do here is you can download a CSV. So I wanted to just let you know that all of this information can be downloaded. So let's take a look at ODD. So I can create, in addition to this Excel spreadsheet view, I can also create cards, but there's over 900 resources in here. So this just is more practical and you have numbers as well. Let's see. The data can be searched, filtered, and sorted in any way you like. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration to show you that feature. So let's go, I'm going to put in cancer. And you can see that I have 97 cells within 40 records that mention cancer. I can also filter. So let's say I want to filter on, let's say geographic region and just the United States. And you can do this as a user on your end. So all of this is what you will see. And I think the links are going to go in the chat. So you'll have this as well. Okay, so I've got US. Let's get that sorted. Let's see, did it do it? Yes. And let's sort by themes. So health equity was the other big push here is I was in our health equity resources and outreach program, and there are a ton of resources related to health equity, and that department just wanted, or that program just wanted to narrow down resources that were related to health equity. So that was part of kind of a first round of pulling this data together. Let's see. So I also, you don't get stuck here. If you want to do more things, make sure you clear this cancer. Otherwise, you'll just be searching within your 97 cells and 40 records. And I've done that myself sometimes. So again, you can download to a CSV file, but I recommend linking directly to this if you want to get the updates and periodic, because we periodically check the websites to ensure the links are correct. And, you know, links get broken often. So we do try our best to make sure that these are reviewed. So future work, we are continue to add the geographic regions, themes, and new key resources or search engines that are useful in getting started with searching for open data resources. And I also added the resources that we talked about today. So I'll make sure those are in the catalog. So also a few months back, I went to an AMIA, the American Medical Informatics Association, and the National Library of Medicine was there. And they had this tiny little advertisement for this beta version that's a catalog that sounds very similar to ODD. So I am happy if they've got this down in a way that's better. I would definitely retire this and send folks to their data catalog. I haven't had a chance to really look at it, but I'll also provide you with a link to this as well. And so if, like I said, it takes quite a bit of time to keep this current and not leave out anything important. So if the National Library of Medicine is going to do it, I'm happy to send our folks and in my consultations use that as well. So I'm going to stop there and thank you.
All right, thanks, Christy. Okay, so now wrapping it up with Andy to talk about the Open Data Network.
All right, excellent. Can you see my screen okay?
We can. You're not in presentation mode though, if you'd like to be
Okay,
in.
let's try that out. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to show a couple slides here because I've learned with short talks, I always forget things. So I'm Andy Lyons. Really great to be here. I work for a part of the UC system that most people have never heard of. I work for the Division of Ag and Natural Resources. So in addition to the 10 campuses and the labs that people are generally familiar with, there's this whole other branch of the UC system where most of our researchers are off campus and they're in the counties and they're working with farmers and natural resource managers. So it's a really cool, I'd be happy to talk to anyone who's interested in this. But today, I'm excited to talk about Open Data Network. So in a nutshell, Open Data Network is a network of public domain data repositories. It is your go-to search engine for looking for data from local government. So counties, cities, this is by far the best place to look for data. And cities and counties do a lot of stuff. They do a lot of work. They do a lot of regulation. There is state data in there. There's also some census data, but the real niche of it is going to be local government data. And some of my favorite data sets, just I've found in the last few days, pet licenses, you can find that. Movie shoot locations, because cities give out movie permits. Street trees, 311 calls are really interesting, like where people complaining about noise or somebody abandoned their couch. Traffic cameras, and a lot of other stuff. So it's worth checking out. It's really, opendatanetwork.com is a search engine for all of these cities and county and government entities that are sharing their data publicly. And oftentimes they have to, because it's publicly funded and that's part of their mandate. And typically you can find data through this website, but then you go to their data portal where you can query it, you can visualize it, and download it, which is what we'll look at today. And all of these data portals are built on the Socrata data repository platform. So that's why you can index them in one big place. And like a lot of open data projects, it's driven by this ethos to do good and to change the world. Yeah, so what kind of data? It's a real interesting kind of mix. There is some state data on there as well. But let me just go right into a demo, all right? I will put this link in the chat window here at the end of the talk, so you can have the slides and all the links. So this is opendatanetwork.com, and this is typically where you would start looking for data, so trying to find data. It does have this box where you can type a question. I've had mixed success with how it interprets questions, but I've had good success, like if I put in here like pets, right, and just type in a keyword, and I'll get a list of data sets around pets, right? We'll come back to this. So you can type in a question. If you're looking for some specific kind of data, maybe transportation data or public safety data, you can drill down through one of these other links. And then if you're interested in a specific geographic area, this is another way that you can get to data. These geographic region links will generally open a link to look at census data, right? So this is a little different. This is a portal to visualize and get your classic socio-demographic and census kind of data, right? So you can check that out if that's what your interest. But in the food theme, I was interested in looking at one thing that cities do is they inspect restaurants. So if I type in here restaurant health inspections, okay, and see what pops up there. Well, came to the first one. Let me type it in again, and then inspections for restaurants. Okay, so here you can see there's 174 data sets from different cities around the country that have, that deal with health inspections in restaurants. And you can go through here. You can use Control F. You can scroll through them. There are some other buttons here, like if you want to add some additional filters, maybe, you can find the domain for, the place that you're looking for, the entity you're looking for. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the one for San Mateo County, which is right here. Okay, it was in that list. So now we've jumped to the San Mateo County Data Hub. This is the county's open data portal. And we're looking at one of their data sets. And this is pretty typical, right? No matter what city you're in, they're going to have different logos and stuff, but they generally all function this similar. There's a page that kind of describes this data set. So we can read a little bit more about, this is done by the San Mateo County Health Department. There's a nice little preview of the data, right? 963,000 rows. So it's a fairly big data set. And we can see the columns that are in the data. Click on the data tab and can see a preview of the data. So this is, you can kind of see what it contains and glean some ideas about what the columns are for. You can also see that every row in here doesn't represent a separate inspection. There's like a lot of things within one inspection. So after you've explored it, that's a good way to do it. To actually work with the data, if you click on this export button over here, this is how you get it, right? And if you want the whole thing, the best way to do that is just download the CSV file, and you'll get it. It might take a couple minutes, but you'll get it. But what I want to show you today is the API endpoint. I should mention also, there's more than just CSV files. There's some other formats here as well, right? So no matter what tool you're working with, but the API endpoint is pretty cool because this allows you to bring these data and work with them in a computing environment like R or Python. So you simply pick it here, and then this URL, this is what you need to work with in Python or R, okay? So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. And then we're going to go into in our notebook. This is on Posit Cloud. So this is something you can share if you're an R user. I'm going to go through this quickly here, but just kind of give you a feel for how you can work with these data in this case, in RStudio. So in this little first code chunk here, you see this URL. That's just what we copied from the portal. Just feeding that right into this read CSV function, and it'll just read it right off. And we get to see the first few rows. So by default, when you do that, it's only going to give you 1,000 rows, right? And we know there's 900,000. So if we want some more of that, we can add another little thing to the URL, right? So now you can see this is the URL that I copied, but now we've added a parameter to it, the limit parameter, which is bumping up the number of records that we're going to get back. And that's the trick. You keep adding things to, I'm not going to have time to show everything, but you can add filters. You can tell it different kinds of things to get. Okay, so now we can get more data. All right, let me talk about filtering, because this is another way to deal with large data, right? You don't need all of those columns. You don't need all of those rows. So here's adding another parameter where, like, now we're just going to get the inspections from Denny's. There's a Denny's in San Mateo County. I used to eat there. So now when I do that, I'm only grabbing the records for Denny's. And so on and so forth. Don't have time to go through all of this, but it's pretty cool what you can do with this. And I'll just jump down to the bottom. And actually, let me jump over here to the rendered notebook, where there's an example of you can actually map these data, because you can grab them as GeoJSON files, not just CSV files. All right, so I'm going to stop there and just finish up with the summary. So this is a really good tool. And check out the links if you want more. I also have office hours. I'd be happy to talk to people more about it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. All right. So now we're into our open Q&A. And actually, there's a couple for you, Andy. Why don't we just start with, so a couple questions about Open Data Network. So let's see. One was, once you follow the link and you're kind of out of that open data, now you're in the county page, are you kind of just like up to the mercy of the county? So are some of them actually not open, or should they all be open?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's up to the counties or the whatever the government entity is. I mean, clearly not all data can or should be public. And it's a real hodgepodge. You know, you're not going to find pet license data for every city in the country. It kind of depends on what they're doing, and yeah, it's pretty specific. Does not generally include things like regulations. I saw that was another question in the chat. Many of them, though, do put information about finance and budgets. That's important public information.
Awesome. Yeah, what was the deal with that Denny's? Was it not good?
It wasn't bad.
Okay. All right. Just circling back to a question that we had earlier in the chat, just for the recording, somebody was asking about a good social media data repository, or place to find social media data. And I think Stephanie put one in here, but now I can't find it. Stephanie, do you remember what your shout out was?
Yeah, there is a relatively new social media archive. It's called SOMAR, S-O-M-A-R. I think it stands for Social Media Archive, run through ICPSR. And it has gotten a little bit trickier to get hands on social media data, especially for the site formerly known as Twitter. But SOMAR kind of sprung up as an authoritative source for really well-documented social media data sets that are also going to preserve the privacy of the folks represented in that data set. There are a whole host of other places you can get social media data. The legalities and coverage and documentation, your mileage may vary, but SOMAR is one that is doing a really good job on actually documenting and having these in one place, and they do offer trainings. And in fact, I put a link in. This won't be relevant for the recording, but they're actually running an informational workshop later this week.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm looking, I don't see any more questions right now. Feel free to throw those in. So maybe I'll just start out with a question for those of you who often help people find data for research. We all have slightly different roles, so sometimes this isn't a part of our work. But when somebody comes to you with a question, sort of where do you start? How do you work with them to kind of find data that might be relevant? Maybe you, Stephanie, you're thinking I just start with data as plural, but I'd love to hear maybe some of your processes for kind of narrowing down the question, deciding where to look, and how to find good data sets.
Yeah, I want to, I guess, claw back a slight professional. I don't just use data as plural. I think it really comes down to thinking through who might be interested in collecting this kind of data. So what organizational entity has a vested interest in collecting employment data or air quality data or demographic data? And looking for that helps narrow down from the wide world of who might be collecting this to, well, the national government has an interest in employment rate. There is going to be a national, it happens through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's going to have that. Same for regional, local, state entities. And then a lot of times what fills the gap tends to be nonprofits. And then researchers who have done the work to go out and scan and digitize old legal documents and build a tabular, ready to analyze data set of something. But I want to toss it over to Kat because I know that you probably have similar or different experiences on tracking down data sets by request.
Yeah, very similar. I think it also is, because some people are like, oh, I want to find this data, and then you have what librarians call, it's called a reference interview. And some of us have experienced it by giving one and been on the other end, where we're basically asking a bunch of questions to you, open-ended questions, because we're trying to figure out what you're and help you figure out exactly what you're looking for. But and so that's part of it. But then sometimes they say, well, you end up finding out that they read this article somewhere that did this and they want to replicate it. And like, well, start with that article, start with your literature review, start with what other data sets that they used there, and then find those data sources, right? And then see if you can replicate it or rebuild it or what have you. But Stephanie also said it's a lot of, like who has the vested interest in it, right? So I'll hand it off if somebody else has any other suggestions.
Yeah, anybody else from our presenters want to weigh in? How do you start thinking about finding data? No worries if not.
Well,
All
I see
right.
there's a question in the chat about
Yeah, we've got some
specifically
more
finding
specific questions coming
that's
in. So if we want to tackle
specific. And
that.
so to Kat's point exactly is thinking about, are you looking for country level data? Are you looking for a range of years, particularly? It seems like the World Health Organization or the UN would be interested in that as a country to country comparison. Those would be good places to start. And then it's going to really depend on if countries have the infrastructure to maintain those statistics to be represented well in a global database as a start.
Yeah, and for the recording, that question was about children's hospitalization rates around the world. And Kat, you suggested IPM's Global Health might be a good place to look as well. Very cool. All right, another question. Do we have any publicly available LLM training sets that people are aware of? Put out as public benchmark data sets. Ooh, this one I'm not familiar with.
I thought there was. I'd first look at like Hugging Face to see what they're using because they're uh, relatively open in what they're doing with their data science training.
That's one of those ones where we'd have the reference interview and then go and do some searching, especially data sets that are sort of cutting edge. I would actually search Archive, ARXIV. It's a preprint server. Just recently, yesterday, I got an email notification, there is a group of researchers here who have been collecting this huge corpus of political conflict data and just released it publicly, and also have a model testing, extracting relevant information out of it versus having students actually manually code this data. It's not really anywhere else, but it's got this paper that has the details about what they did, and they talk about their underlying data set. So sometimes you can, to Kat's point, track things down through a literature review of if people are making things public, or if people are being good stewards of their research, they should be citing their underlying data.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephanie. And, you know, I think we're all resisting the urge to just go start Googling stuff and searching on the side. But I do want to put a plug out. If you have data that you're looking for, please do reach out to your campus librarians. All of our campuses have like either a data science librarian, a data librarian, a data management librarian. Exact titles may vary, but they're always very happy to help you find data that you need for research, for your classes, or anything. If it exists, you know, we'll see if we can help you find it. Sometimes it doesn't exist. And I'm at UCSF, and sometimes people want stuff that's really expensive, and we just have to have a conversation about, well, you know, this does exist, but it costs $30,000 to use it. So is there something else we can, put you in touch with? So yeah, definitely reach out and let us know. We're always happy to kind of answer questions. It looks like we got a link to, did find some Hugging Face data sets in there, which is great. All right, well, I think we have time for one more question if somebody has one. But otherwise, is there anything else that anyone else on the panel wanted to add?
I just want to add, because Ariel, you'd mentioned that, you know, like we're resisting going and searching for things, which I wasn't, by the way. But like some of it is us knowing how to add qualifiers to our Google or Bing searches, so you can search by site and such. So if you don't know how to do that, again, talk to your data librarian, because we have those tricks also with something that's a common tool like that.
Totally. Yeah, there's lots of hacks. Librarians are big on search hacks and have a lot of search expertise. So we're really happy to help you find data for your research. So one last link in the chat, Stephanie put a link into paperswithcode.com.
I was Googling on the side. This is a resource that links together like machine learning and AI-centric data sets, GitHub repositories, and papers that are published. And so it builds this awesome multi-dimensional network where everything is connected to anything else. And you can see how different data sets are used by different research groups and code. And it's really, really fun. And you'll definitely spend an hour exploring it.
That's great. I feel like I have a lot more resources to add to my own UCSF, guides and links. So this has been really helpful for me. All right, well, we're at 3 o'clock. So thank you so much, everyone, for spending your time with us. A round of applause for all of our presenters. Some really fascinating data sources. We hope you will go check them out. And if you have more questions, reach out to your local librarians. We're always happy to help. Thanks so much.